The 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly has brought together leaders and representatives from across the world, and they've discussed issues of critical global importance. Among those attending were the foreign affairs ministers for both Egypt and Hungary. My colleague, Mike Walter, interviewed both of them in New York. We begin with Badr Abdelatty, the Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs. He talked about UN reform, Gaza, and Egypt-China relations.
Foreign Minister, always a pleasure talking to you. This is obviously a big year, 80th anniversary of the UN. As you look back on that history, what are kind of some of the marks along the way? What has the UN been able to accomplish?
Well, it was all about multilateralism. It was all about dialogue, about, political and diplomatic solutions to all conflict resolution by peaceful means. It was all about dialogue, coexistence, and of course, renouncing the use of force in settling differences among different nations. So that was the hope of the United Nations, especially after the devastation of the Second World War. And, it was all about new international system based on, as I mentioned, multilateralism and dialogue. But unfortunately now, on the 80th anniversary of the UN, we are in a completely different picture. We have now unilateralism, unfortunately, polarization, and clear-cut violations of all norms and international law, international humanitarian law. And we are not having only double standard, but hundreds of standards now applied in different conflicts. So it's extremely frustrating, and we need to reinvigorate the UN. We need to go back to the rules-based order because, as you see now in Gaza, what's happening there is clear violations of basic norms, of basic principles of the UN Charter. You have a country considered itself above the law and has impunity, and to do anything beyond the imagination, crossing all red lines, attacking 7 countries in one time without being punished or paying a price for that. So it's all about now, unfortunately, deviating from the principles enshrined in the UN Charter.
I want to touch on Gaza, but let me just go a little bit deeper on what you're talking about, because Chinese President Xi Jinping at the SCO talked about reforming and global governance and basically giving smaller states a larger voice. We heard the Kenyan leader as well addressing this. Reforms are needed. If you were to kind of wave a magic wand, what type of reforms are necessary to change this global body?
We must have 2 sets of reforms in 2 pillars. Political pillar related to peace and security, and the other pillar is related to socio-economic pillar. As for the first one, in the heart is the Security Council, because the Security Council is the main organ of the UN, which is entrusted with the issue of maintaining peace and security in the world, the international peace and security. But unfortunately now we have undemocratic Security Council giving veto rights for 5 countries. And as you see, we have total paralyzation of the work of the Security Council. So, the veto right is entrusted to those countries, and we have a lot of cases, hundreds of cases, where the whole international community are rallying behind one specific position and resolution, and only one country can use the veto right in order to block and to stop everything. This is one issue with regard the governance of the international system. The second issue is to be more democratic, more representatives, because the current Security Council is not representative. What about Africa? Africa is the very important continent with 52 countries, and of course, the only continent which is going to double its population by 2050. And now we have no, democratic representation of Africa within the Security Council. That's why we have the Azzolini Consensus, which is considering the unified Africa position. So we need to reform the Security Council. We need at least 4 seats to be designated to Africa, 2 permanent seats with all powers, and another 2 non-permanent seat for the Africa continent. This is one issue. On the other issue, on the economic front, we have those Bretton Woods institutions like World Bank, IMF, and others. They are not democratic as well, and we have lack of democratic representation of developing countries. This is one issue. And the second issue, there is no single mechanism now with regard dealing with the issue of debts, especially for the medium income countries. You know, we have only for low income, but there is no mechanism on dealing with the issue of debts, as well as the issue of finance. You know, the finance of development and the climate finance as well. Those are 2 important issues, and we don't have for African countries, for developing countries, enough accessibility to concessional finance through the different Bretton Woods institutions. So those are the 2 main pillars for the reform of the whole international system, international organization, one dealing with security and peace issues, which is entrusted in the Security Council, and the other one is related to the Bretton Woods institution.
It's interesting you brought up Gaza. I want to get your thoughts on Netanyahu getting ready to give his address. We heard, please, order in the hall, order in the hall. We saw the walkout, striking imagery. I think when people look back on this UN General Assembly, that's going to be one of the lasting images. Your thoughts?
This is, you know, a reflection of the anger among people all over the world. It's shameful for the international community to watch what's happening in Gaza. You have man-made starvation and famine. You have systematic killings of Palestinians. You have a UN independent committee which is describing the situation in Gaza now as a genocide.
And do you see it as that?
Of course, absolutely. And if you have a minimal needs of the people in Gaza, at least to have 800 trucks per day, and the Israelis are allowing maximum 100 trucks per day and closing all crossing, connecting Israel with Gaza, even closing the Rafah crossing from the Palestinian side. This is, of course, outrageous, and it's shameful for the international community to accept that without intervening, without imposing specific measures on the Israeli government in order to stop such kind of clear violation of international humanitarian law.
I saw protests out in front of our hotel today. What if there were your children that were there in Gaza? So many people, so angry. We see the anger actually at the UN General Assembly. What's it going to take to actually see this suffering end?
Well, we need, of course, this anger to be translated into specific policies to pressure the Israeli government to change the course in Gaza, to stop the killings, to stop the artificial starvation of the people in Gaza. So we have some hope with President Trump. You know, he met with leaders, some leaders from the Arab world and from the Islamic world. And he sounds committed to stop this aggression and this war against the Palestinians. So we are hopeful that President Trump will deliver, and he has his own vision points with regard ending the war and talking about the day after and lifting all impediments which is hindering the flow of humanitarian aid and medical aid into the people of Gaza, and to talk also about the reconstructions of Gaza. What was important that President Trump, during this meeting, he said he's going to be against annexation of the West Bank, and this is important. And he said that he will implement a Marshall Plan in Gaza, and keeping people in Gaza and allowing those who left their homeland to come back if they like to do that.
I know you're pressed for time. I have to ask one final question. The special relationship between Egypt and China, and not just Egypt and China. You mentioned the African continent, China's relationship with the entire continent. Can you describe that for us?
Well, we are happy, and of course, we are honored that it was Egypt, the first Arab country to recognize the People's Republic of China in 1956. We are proud that we are the first country in the region to recognize China in 1956, and of course, we have commemorated the 10th anniversary of the strategic partnership between Egypt and China. We value this partnership. We value the Chinese investment in Egypt and Chinese business in Egypt, and the relationship between the two leaders of Egypt and China, just perfect. And of course, we have the political will to further enhance this cooperation, and we have directions from the two leaders to do more and more with regard, of course, further deepening and enhancing trade, investment. We are happy that there is a Chinese industrial park in the Suez Canal Economic Zone by TIDA, which is doing amazing job with 178 companies, but we need to double them because we have a very conducive environment for investment in Egypt, and we have a special status for the Suez Canal Economic Zone. So the Chinese companies, they are using this conducive environment in order to produce and to export outside Egypt, and even to sell their products in the domestic market. But we have huge potentials, and we can do more and more, and we are looking for doubling the Chinese investment in Egypt and localizing some specific industries such as electric vehicles, electric batteries, and the solar panels for the production of electricity through solar parks. So sky the limit for the cooperation between the two great nations. We are two great nations with their long history and two big civilizations. So I believe that we can do more and more, and we can make use of this long and strong historical relationship as a solid basis in order to do more in investment, in trade, and to achieve mutual interest of the two great nations and two great people.
For Mr. Abdelatty, thank you so much for your time. I know it's you don't have much of it. You're always on the go this week in New York, so we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andres.
Next, we turn to Hungary. My colleague Mike Walter also sat down in New York with its Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Peter Szijjarto, and he began by asking him about his views on the United Nations, its accomplishments and future as it marks its 80th anniversary.
Well, back in Hungary, we respect United Nations pretty much because of our history. You know, we live in Central Europe, in the heart of the continent, and we have been losers of the era when the world was divided into blocks. We were at the wrong end, and we lost basically 4 decades of our lives, and we still feel the impacts of those lost decades, let's put it that way. And for us, all organizations which help not to divide the world into blocks again are helpful. So we want connectivity instead of blocks. And the United Nations have been created as a platform where everyone, even those who are in a hostile relationship with each other, can talk to each other. And this is the key, I think. As long as the channels of communication and the channels of diplomacy are open, there's always a hope for a peaceful solution, and there's always a hope that we can avoid the worst scenario, which is another world war. Let's put it this way. I always come with great expectations, I have to tell you. Then on many occasions, my expectations become illusions, unfortunately, because I think that there are many who do not look at the UN and the General Assembly as a chance to talk to each other and to make peace, but rather spreading narratives which are not helpful.
You have such a great relationship with Beijing, and you've been able to watch their role in peacekeeping, other areas when it comes to its particular environment within the UN. How do you view it?
Well, I had the chance to be there, in Beijing very recently on the parade at the beginning of September, and then we had a lengthy discussion right after with the foreign minister. You know, I'm working together with Minister Wang Yi for 11 years now. I think this is exactly the day, the 11th anniversary of getting into this position. So we have been working together with Wang Yi for 11 years. And I always respected a lot the role China tries to play in the new multipolar world, namely to stabilize and cool down those heated discussions and tensions which have unfortunately been going on. I have to tell you, I'm proud that Hungary and the People's Republic of China are belonging to the peace camp together. We do belong to the global pro-peace majority together. And what I hope is that the Chinese government and the president will continue to carry out this pro-peace activity. China, with its weight, with its size, with its capacities, can play a vital role when it comes to resolving conflicts all around the world.
You mentioned early on your first response about Hungary and its place when divided into blocks out was a loser in a sense. Yeah. One of the things that Xi Jinping has talked about, he talked about it in Tianjin at the SCO meeting recently, was global governance and reforming it and giving some of those smaller voices, the smaller states, a louder voice within the UN. Can you talk to me about how that resonates with Hungary and other countries?
Yeah, well, absolutely. You know, we understand that this whole system of the United Nations should be reformed. Why? Because UN can fulfill its initial role less and less. We have to see that. And I'm not only speaking about the financial problems. I'm not only speaking about not being effective generally, but I cannot recall any conflict in the recent years which was or would have been resolved through a strong intervention by the United Nations itself. There were always big powers, countries who mediated, who brought some solution, but United Nations as such was not able to do anything like that. So I think that all those voices which are aiming at reforming the activities and the operation of the United Nations are well funded, and those make sense to discuss. So I think these upcoming years should be the years of great initiatives. And in this regard, we equally value the initiatives of President Trump and President Xi Jinping. And we do hope that the two of them will find the way of cooperation. And I say this from a very selfish Hungarian perspective, because we are a small landlocked country without any kind of energy resources in the heart of Europe, which has China as its #1 investment and trading partner outside of the European continent, United States as a #2 investment and trading partner outside of the European continent. So for us, small guys, small country, it's vital that the two big partners of ours find a way to cooperate with each other rather than they have a conflict, you know. So.
Well, talk to me about threading the needle. I mean, Viktor Orban visited President Trump when he was out of office in Mar-a-Lago. He has a close relationship with both leaders. You've met with Marco Rubio as well as Wang Yi, you just mentioned, 11-year anniversary. How does Hungary navigate this? Because so many people feel like you have to be pulled into the East camp or the West camp, and somehow you are able to thread the needle.
Well, we always follow the Hungarian national interest. This is #1. #2, that we always reject the approach that our foreign policy would be pro this or pro that, pro-American, pro-Chinese, pro-Russian. No, it's pro-Hungarian. It's pro-Hungarian. And again, a small-sized country, landlocked in the heart of Europe, being dependent on the well-functioning of the international global and political order, for us, it is vital that we keep our capacity and ability to talk to all big players is vital. So, I mean, we spoke very openly of the fact that we were crossing fingers for President Trump to win the election. We always speak openly that we see President Trump as the only hope to make peace in the Ukrainian conflict. We always speak very honestly and clearly about the necessity of keeping the channels of communication open with the Russians. We never made secret out of the fact that we have to maintain our energy cooperation with Russia, otherwise we cannot operate the country properly. We have never made secret out of respecting China and its leadership. And see, if now you pose the question, who is the European leader who can talk to both directions, or all three directions, let's put it this way, US, Russia, China, simultaneously, there's only one. Is the Prime Minister of Hungary, who can talk to all of these leaders simultaneously. And this goes back to our strategy, which is pro-Hungarian and follows the Hungarian national interest. We always carry out our foreign policy on a rational basis, common sense. I think over-politicization and over-ideologization of foreign policy is very dangerous. And we see the outcome of this phenomenon that international politics are now to a big extent over-politicized and over-ideologized. And we see the consequences, the wars, the sanction regimes, the restrictions, the skyrocketing energy prices, the economic uncertainties, and so on and so forth.
You talking economy, in July you said this: Hungary proudly serves as the primary European destination for Chinese capital. Proudly. Talk to us about this relationship. Where is it today and where do you see it going?
Look, last year 31% of all Chinese investments targeting Europe arrived in Hungary at the end. The year before it was even 44%. And we are proud of that because we always win these competitions to attract Chinese capital to Hungary against very strong Western European countries. So for me it's a bit funny when Western European countries complain about the presence of Chinese capital in Europe, but they usually complain of this phenomenon always after losing competitions or races for Chinese investments. Because I'm responsible in the Hungarian government for investment attraction. So I negotiate personally these big investments. And I know that in case of these big Chinese investments, my competitors were Western Europeans, always. And they wanted desperately these investments. And once they lost these races, they always started to complain about the presence of the Chinese capital. So it's very hypocritical. So if you look at the current European political, let's say, aspects, you see a big bunch of hypocrisy when it comes to energy from Russia, you know. Always those are being criticized who do it openly by those who are doing it secretly. Same with the Chinese capital. We are proud to have them, while those who lose complain about that. So I have to tell you very clearly that the Chinese investments have contributed a lot to the Hungarian national economic performance. Plus, they contributed a lot to the successful operation of the German automotive sector as well. Because what happens in Hungary is that we became a meeting point of the Eastern and Western investors. As we are the only country in Europe besides Germany where all three premium German car makers are present with separate factories, they have attracted their Chinese suppliers to Hungary. And I'm usually being reached out by global CEOs of German companies to give cash incentives to their Chinese suppliers to come to Hungary to be close. So, I mean, this is the reality, and I understand that politicians try to artificially dig into that and, you know, cut these bonds, but I mean, if we do that, then we kill the European economy.
The way you've described the world with these camps and people with different polarized views, the importance of multilateralism. Obviously, Hungary sees it as vastly important. And global governance. Talk to us about your thoughts on that.
Well, for us, as again a small country, multilateralism is extremely important. And where we see the major issue here is that our interest is that that international politics comes back to the basis of mutual respect, because I think this is what we currently miss or lack. That the basis of the international political discourse or activities is absolutely not mutual respect. It's hostilities, it's lecturing, it's accusation, it's cornering, you know, and this brought us to a situation that there is a risk of an outbreak of a third world war, obviously. As long as the big guys, sorry to say that, talk to each other, then the risk can be, you know, kept low. But I mean, once they are not able to talk to each other, this risk grows again. So reforming the operation of the whole global political scene, I think, is the way to get rid of these tensions which are now influencing our everyday life. So mutual respect and the respect towards international law have to be brought back in order to reform the global political agenda.
And that is all for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington. Thanks for joining us.